If you're thinking to yourself, why is he not talking about money? Why is he not talking about bonds and all this other shenanigans? What you've done is you've confused finance with economics, which is a very common thing to do. I've done it 100 times. People do it all the time. Economics and finance are not the same thing. What is evolutionary game theory? It's obviously a mathematical framework rooted in biology and economics. First sort of inspired by John von Neumann. You hear that name quite frequently. It's because he's the GOAT. It can help us understand the emergence and persistence of antibiotic resistance in microbial populations such as biofilms and pathogenic strains. So what do all those fancy words mean, right? Maybe you've only studied economics and you want to learn more about this stuff. Essentially, in layman's terms, we're going to look at how bacteria outsmart antibiotics using ideas from game theory. Almost like they're playing a game with life or death consequences. So it's, higher stakes, let's just say that, than the prisoner's dilemma, Jail is probably better than death, but who knows? I have not died or been to jail. So, first of all, evolutionary game theory differs from classical game theory in one critical respect. It models populations of agents who do not necessarily act rationally. This is huge. So agents, I'm going to hold my iPad here. I'm going to write this down. Agents do not necessarily, I know the rationality assumption is crumbling, necessarily act rational. This is crazy business to me. This is earth shaking. I've nearly had a heart attack already, but it gets even crazier. So these agents do not necessarily act rationally, but instead propagate based on relative reproductive success. So each strategy's success is frequency dependent. That is, the fitness or payoff of a given behavior depends on how common it is in the population. Again, in layman's terms, in terms that I can understand better, because full transparency, there's a transparency moment. Transparency. I don't know. Man, I just started learning this stuff. I'm doing these YouTube videos as a way to calibrate my learning and to make sure I'm doing it consistently, okay? It's not like I'm not here to blow up and act like I don't know nobody. I'm here to showcase my learning. But anyway, in simpler terms, instead of smart players making choices, we look at how different types of bacteria grow or die depending on how many of them are around. The more common a behavior is, the more or less successful it becomes. So that becomes this is a huge part of it, where it's not just a rational sort of interaction between agents. It can be proportional to the amount of agents. It's kind of cool. So we're gonna make a game. We're gonna make a game, shall we? We're gonna have resistant bacteria are so bacteria that bear a metabolic cost to maintain resistance mechanism. So essentially, it burns through a little more to do a little more. It's as simple as that. So it's a resistant. I guess I should spell resistant right, and maybe I'll write bacteria. Higher. I'm gonna say like a higher cost, because that's in terms I can understand, to maintain better resistance against antibiotic solutions, right? Boom. And then you have the susceptible. Make sure you're spelling this stuff right. And bacteria grow faster under normal conditions, but are vulnerable to antibiotics. That's the whole case. So, spread faster under normal conditions, but are vulnerable to essentially being fucked in the butt. Sorry about that. Sorry for my outburst. So each strain interacts with the others in the population. These interactions form the basis of a strategic environment. Again, simpler terms, maybe I don't really want to write anymore, but in similar terms, some bacteria are built to survive antibiotics but grow slowly because it's more of an energy cost to do so. And then others grow quickly but die when antibiotics show up. How well they do depends on who else is in the mix. So we can make a little payoff matrix here. We can have the susceptible and the resistant, and we have the susceptible and the resistant here. I've decided to go over this matrix right here because I think it's so fascinating that it deserves to have its own sort of breakdown, and then next video we'll kind of go over more. So this might be confusing to you as it was to me, because why is this the case? Why is RS not equal to SR in evolutionary game theory? Why is this the case? The reason is you're just reading this wrong. It's not, again, it should be pretty obvious because there's only one number in each sort of cell here, but I'll break it down for you because I think it's really, really kind of cool. So you have, again, this reads like this. Kind of is important. These are arrows that I'm drawing to show you how this is interacting with things, okay? It's sort of important. You could really write SR down here as well. I think this would be fine for now. This line right here reads an S interacting with S. So it's S interacting with S. That's how this reads. How this reads, maybe we'll do like a green. How this reads is an S interacting with R, and so on and so forth. When a resistant microbe meets another resistant microbe, they're just fighting over a whole lot of resources. So it becomes just super competitive, essentially. It becomes a really competitive game. So in this evolutionary game, the payoff RR, which is 1, represents the fitness of a resistant strain R when it interacts with another resistant strain. So it's 2 different resistant strains. If we were gonna, heck, man, maybe it's best to do something like SR and then like a subscript 1, so then it's more clear. I don't know why I didn't do that. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like, you know, because they're different, they are different agents, essentially. They're interacting with each other. And so when 2 low-cost agents meet, there's lots of gain. When a high-cost agent meets a low-cost agent, they're able to dominate with pretty good ease. When a low-cost agent, but again, is weaker than a high-cost agent, there's no gain. And when 2 highly resistant agents meet each other, there's pretty lackluster gain. And I think that is more than enough analysis for this YouTube video. I'm planning on doing a whole lot more about this because I find it fascinating. It's obviously very different from economic game theory, and it's still very valid and cool. And I don't exactly know what I'm talking about just yet, but I hope I've made a little bit of sense this video, and I'm very excited to do a follow-up to this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Okay, so one thing that I forgot to mention, this isn't a zero-sum game. It's about relative reproductive success.